Alaska is home to 16 units of the national park system. The last frontier includes some of the largest parks and protected areas, not just in the United States, but in the entire world. Its wild and untamed beauty is unparalleled and little visited, from misty fjords and temperate rainforests to icy, smoldering volcanoes to windswept frozen Arctic tundra. Alaska is America's premier wilderness state, and today we're seeing what its national park sites are all about. Now, you'll notice I mentioned that there were 16 national park units in Alaska, but the Park Service itself actually says there are 23. So why the discrepancy? Where are those 7 extra parks coming from? Well, Alaska's national parks are rather unique in the national park system overall because of the 8 N-P national parks here. 6 of them have national preserves of the same name directly adjacent to their boundaries. And there's also one national monument and preserve. So you're probably familiar with like Denali National Park, but there's also a Denali National Preserve like immediately right next door. Same with several others. This has to do with the fact that national preserves allow hunting while national parks do not, which is why the Park Service technically classifies them as actual separate, administratively distinct units with different management regulations, hence their calculation of 23. Functionally, though, these places are still basically just one contiguous protected area, hence my count of 16. I think a geographic approach makes the most sense here, so we'll start in the southeastern panhandle and work our way up from there. That means we'll begin at Sitka National Historical Park, located in the town of Sitka. This is one of 2 mainly history-focused parks in Alaska, and it protects the site of a battle between indigenous Tlingit peoples and Russian fur traders here in 1804. Remember that Alaska was still Russian territory at this time, and as it tried to expand its fur trading empire ever further, it came into many conflicts with the area's indigenous peoples. Because of this, it's actually one of the only NPS sites in the country to interpret Russian history. One of the other major claims to fame for this site is its large collection of native totem poles. Originally, these poles were given as gifts to the then governor of Alaska, John Green Brady, who took them to St. Louis, actually, for the Louisiana Purchase Exposition in a bid to attract tourists and settlers to his state. Once the exposition was over, these poles were returned to Alaska, ending up ultimately in Sitka, where they were placed on display as a totem pole park, later to become part of Sitka National Historical Park. Moving north from there, if you travel all the way up the Inside Passage until you basically can't go any further, you'll hit Skagway, Alaska, home to most of Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park. And I say most because this is one of those discontiguous parks with another location actually in Seattle, Washington. This is the other history-focused park for Alaska. Anyway, this one protects and interprets, obviously, the history of the Klondike Gold Rush of the late 1800s. There's basically 3 main areas of the park where you can retrace the steps of all the people who once tried to strike it rich in this area back around the turn of the 20th century. The Downtown Historic District, or the 2 main routes that went up into the mountains where people went to look for gold. The Daya-Chilkoot Trail area and the White Pass area. And then from here, that's where we start to get into the full-on nature parks. Still staying in Southeast Alaska, though, there's Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. This park protects a classic southeastern landscape, deep, incised fjords, temperate rainforest, and just a ton of tidewater glaciers, like it's right there in the name. Most people see this park by boat, most likely a cruise ship, but you can also get here by seaplane or kayak or raft or by walking if you really wanted to have a real adventure. Basically any way except a car, because there's no roads into the park. My favorite fun fact about this park too is that the Park Service operates like a mobile visitor center where they actually board cruise ships to give people information about the park, since again, you can't just drive up to a visitor center like you would in most other national parks. Then almost right next door to Glacier Bay is Wrangell-St. Elias National Park and Preserve, the largest single national park in the United States. This place is over 13 million acres of pure Alaskan wilderness. The park takes its name from the mountains which it protects, the Wrangell and Elias ranges. You'll find 9 of the 16 tallest mountains in the US here and some of the tallest seaside cliff faces in the entire world. The mountains literally just spill directly into the ocean here. Also, Canada has its own national park here just over the border, Kluane National Park. And when you combine those two, they make up one of the largest contiguous protected areas in the world, nearly 20 million acres. Continuing our journey west over onto the Kenai Peninsula, we'll come to one of my personal favorite national parks, Kenai Fjords National Park. This is one of the 2 national parks that does not have a national preserve attached to it. Obviously, the fjords, complete with glaciers and mountains that just drop right into the ocean, are the park's standout feature. That's where they got their name. These waters are swimming literally with marine life like whales and sea otters and seals and puffins, and the scenery is very dramatic. It's stunningly beautiful. But my favorite part of the park is actually back on land. There's only one trail in this park, and it leads to the Harding Ice Field, the largest ice field located entirely within the United States. It's a challenging hike to get up there, but getting to see what the world would have looked like during an ice age is really quite eye-opening, and in my opinion, really puts this entire park in perspective, because you get to see the ice field that spawned all of the glaciers that actually carved the fjords the park is named after. So definitely a park of land and sea here, where both are intimately connected. Then we hop across Cook Inlet onto the Alaska Peninsula to Aniakchak National Monument and Preserve. This is the least visited national park site in America. It usually sees like less than 200 visitors per year, and in 1995, it didn't record a single visitor at all. The reason for this is it's in a very remote location. It's very difficult to get to. Again, there's no roads in or out here, and the weather is absolutely horrible. It's awful. There's also no visitor infrastructure of any kind. But if you do get there, the standout feature for this park is the 6-mile wide, 2,000-foot deep Aniakchak caldera left over from a previous volcanic eruption. Inching back up the peninsula ever so slightly, we get to Katmai National Park and Preserve. Y'all probably know this one for one thing: Fat Bear Week, which takes place each October and showcases the park's mini bears gorging themselves on salmon in preparation for winter. Most of the action takes place at Brooks Falls. If you're lucky enough to get a spot at the Brooks Lodge, you can go and watch these burly bruins in person. But if not, no worries. The park live streams the whole thing. I also have a whole video about Fat Bear Week and why this ecosystem is really important and is the reason so many bears actually live here in the first place. So I'll point you in that direction for more info about this park. Now, adjacent to the National Preserve portion of Katmai, which remember is technically a separate unit, there's another separate unit called the Alagnak Wild River. Not all nationally designated wild rivers are part of the national park system, but this one is. It obviously encompasses the Alagnak River itself and some of the land that surrounds it, which ultimately leads right into the heart of Katmai National Park, into one of its big lakes, Nonvlanuk Lake. Basically, the reason this park is entirely separate from Katmai instead of just being a part of it is because it has commercial fishing and hunting operations that are permitted there that would not otherwise be allowed in Katmai. And the final Alaska Peninsula park is Lake Clark National Park and Preserve. This place is home to an insanely productive ecosystem, including the most productive run of sockeye salmon in the entire world. The reason for all this biodiversity is because of the sheer variety of landscapes and ecosystem types that are found here. You've got giant mountains, volcanoes, glaciers, glacial lakes, boreal forests, meadows, wetlands, and several very large rivers that empty right out into the ocean. All of this is happening in a very close proximity, resulting in just a smorgasbord of biological activity. Finally, we move off the coast and into the Alaskan interior, where our first stop will be the world-famous Denali National Park and Preserve. This was Alaska's first national park, protected back in 1917. The main attraction here is, of course, Denali, the tallest mountain in all of North America, 20,310 feet. Denali is really interesting in that there aren't a lot of other tall mountains around it, and so if you're lucky enough to catch a glimpse of it, it stands out like a sore thumb and completely towers over the surrounding landscape. If you have to ask yourself if you're looking at Denali, you're not looking at Denali. You will know it if you see it. Also, access here is pretty unique for the national park system. There's a few exceptions, but basically the only way you enter this park is via bus. Like, you have to book a guided bus tour, regardless of if you're going backpacking or staying in the park or just visiting for a day trip. You've got to take the bus. You can't drive your car down the park's only road, again, with a few exceptions. Then we'll move east across the interior nearly to the border with Canada to Yukon-Charley Rivers National Preserve. This park protects 130 miles of the famous Yukon River, but also the entire watershed of the Charley River. It's very rare to get an entire watershed inside of a single protected area like this, but that's actually super important because a watershed is like a drainage area, and having the entirety of the Charley River drainage area under federal protection means that it stays super nice and clean and pristine. This is also the first standalone national preserve we've come across, which means fishing and hunting are permitted here as long as you're following all of the regulations. And from there, for the final 5 parks on our list, we're heading up to the Arctic. We're now venturing into some of the most remote national park sites in the country. These are extreme wilderness areas with little to no visitor infrastructure of any kind, including, yes, roads. Visitor experiences here are like wilderness expeditions. These are not the kind of places you just roll up and go for a quick day hike. They're hard to get to, they require serious planning, and you absolutely have to have the proper training and skills to survive in them, or you hire someone who does have them. First off, on the Seward Peninsula is the Bering Land Bridge National Preserve, another standalone national preserve. Geologically, this park interprets an area that was once home to a land bridge that connected North America and Asia. This park is mostly tundra and permafrost, only supporting low-growing grasses and sedges. Also, this is a very important subsistence area for indigenous Alaskans. Then, just across the Kotzebue Sound from there lies the Cape Krusenstern National Monument. This one is mainly a coastal park on Alaska's Chukchi Sea. It's mostly just coastal plain and is home to a national archaeological district of the same name, which preserves 5,000 years of human habitation spread across 114 different sequential beach ridges. Now, these final 3 parks, despite all being administratively separate units, are all adjacent to one another and combined form the single biggest unbroken expanse of protected land in the United States, and one of the largest overall in the entire world, over 16 million acres. We'll start with the Noatak National Preserve, the last standalone national preserve on this list. This park preserves almost the entire drainage area for the Noatak River itself, designated a National Wild and Scenic River, and one of the last intact, undisturbed river systems in the entire United States. This park is also a major transition area between the boreal forest and the Arctic tundra. And finally, we'll end with the 2 Arctic twins, Gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve and Kobuk Valley National Park. Gates is mostly centered around the Brooks Range, one of the northernmost mountain ranges in the entire world, plus all of the rivers and streams that flow out of those mountains, which includes 6 officially designated wild and scenic rivers. This was also the least visited national park in America last year. Just 11,907 visitors came through here. Kobuk Valley, on the other hand, isn't really as much of a mountain park as Gates. It does have some of the Brooks Range, but this park is mostly centered on the Kobuk River and its low-lying wetland areas. Its biggest claim to fame, though, are the Kobuk Sand Dunes, the largest Arctic sand dunes in North America. I find it weird, but it saw just over 17,000 visitors last year, like 5,000 more than Gates. I'm not sure why there's a discrepancy there, but even then, that's still not a lot of people. Again, you're really in the wilderness in these parks, and the visitor numbers definitely reflect that. And there you have it, folks, all 16/23 national park sites in Alaska. I've been to Alaska twice and have barely even scratched the surface of these parks. It's a huge state with some really remote places, but it's so beautiful, y'all. The scale of the nature and beauty and wilderness and wildlife that's on display up there is on a totally other level, and I can't recommend enough for anyone and everyone to visit its parks and see what it's all about. Let me know in the comments down below how many of these you visited and which ones were your favorites. As always, direct support is very much appreciated over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/National Park Diaries. I really do rely on the support from my community to finance these productions for you all. This is a pretty niche channel, and so I do greatly appreciate any support you can throw my way over there. All right, until next time, thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.